Welcome to the Wild Hope Rising podcast. We're your hosts, Sunny Kane and Tammy Clotton, and we're so glad you stopped by. We want to help you be wildly you, and believe it or not, you're already her. We invite you to gather around the table with us. We'll help you move through your wilderness season, no matter how you got here. So lean in, let's ignite your purpose, and discover what you're made of. Buckle up, my friend. It's time for Wild Hope. Well, welcome back to the podcast, ladies. We are so glad to have you here. Tammy and I are having another Hope Huddle today with a dear friend of ours that we're going to introduce you to in just a few moments. Her name is Kirsten Wilson. But Tammy, we've been having so much fun as we've been back in season 2, have we not?
We have been. It's so fun to interview all these interesting people with so much wisdom to share. It's incredible.
And it's a reminder, all of us, we have something to offer. And that is for each one of you who are listening. We might be the person who is playing on your radio or in your headphones or wherever you're at. But at the end of the day, you too have something to offer. And we want you to know when you sit at the Wild Hope Rising table, you are invited in the fullness of who you are. We stand here today knowing that we may have beliefs that are different, and we welcome that. But we stand on common values, and we talk about real issues that we walk through. And what I love is we actually heard from a woman named Lisa today. And first of all, Lisa, thank you for taking time to write to us. She did this through Apple Podcasts, but she said has been so helpful to her heart that at this table, we aren't in the habit of tying everything up in a pretty red bow with 3 steps to a perfect life. And as a result, that has actually helped her to draw near to God. And my goodness, when I read that, Lisa, you get it. That's exactly what we're trying to create here is an authentic, real place where we can talk about real issues. And that is why we ask you, we must, as women who are a part of this community, recognize that there are women in our offices, they are in our coffee shops, they are in your children's schools, they are in your gym, and they need hope. And that is why we ask you. It's not because we need to know how great we are. Tammy and I are fiercely devoted to the idea of that woman who needs hope. And we are asking you for your partnership. And that is why we say, please share this with those women. And also one thing that we have learned is the rating and reviewing is really important. That is how Apple and Spotify decide to go out there and share us more when people rate and review us. So we thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy lives, not only to listen, but to do that rating and reviewing. It is a great honor to us. And thank you for being here at this table today. So with that, we got to tell you who is sitting at this table. You guys can't see her right now, but we can. And both Tammy and I are geeked out about our guest today. Her name is Kirsten Wilson, and she is a college instructor, an Enneagram coach, a workshop retreat speaker, and a church ministry leader. Geographically, she lives in Colorado, but metaphorically, she said she lives at the intersection of faith, story, and relationship. Her favorite thing is to help people step inside of God's story and to discover something new about their own story in the process. Kirsten, we want to welcome you to Wild Hope Rising.
Thanks so much. I've been looking forward to this, and I'm really glad to be here with you too.
I can attest to that she loves to help people step into God's story. I look forward to this conversation.
And it's funny, beyond the bio, we love reading those because it does help people acquaint with who is Kirsten Wilson. But beyond that, what I want you ladies to know is Kirsten Wilson, first of all, her husband married my husband and I. So that's kind of a fun fact. Fun
True
fact.
statement. I was there. I saw it happen.
And boy, have we transformed since then, 21 years ago. So we have known Kirsten for a very long time. But really, something I wanted to do today, I was telling Tammy, is I believe glory goes to God, but honor goes to people. And so I just wanted to say, Kirsten, I honor you. And the reason I do is I don't know if you are aware that I am aware that you were the shoulders that I stood on when I got to preach the word of God at a church. And for ladies who don't know, we both served in ministry at a church. And a lot of women don't recognize that actually a lot of churches have problems with women speaking. And so the courage that Kirsten had to be the very first in that church and what she has created that maybe no one will ever know is a ripple effect where women were able to speak in that house. And I was able to speak because you went first. And so I just wanted to honor you today and say thank you for going first, my friend.
Wow.
And me as well. So it's not just Sunny, but I got to teach and preach in that same house because you went first. So thank you.
Wow. Well, thank you. I did the thing, and I am so glad that it had a ripple effect for you guys. And I'm so glad that your voices were heard and are being heard in this space and in the other spaces where you're speaking. Love it.
So with that, we get to share you with our community. We thank you for saying yes. But maybe just before we kind of dive in, and we're going to talk wilderness seasons and all of that today, what's been bringing you joy these days, Kirsten? Like, tell us.
What brings me joy these days? Wow, wasn't expecting that. I was in the wilderness zone here.
Like, that is polar opposite.
Let me think about joy. Okay, so my husband and I recently went on a retreat with our church up in the mountains. I love the mountains. Mountains bring me joy. And while we were there, there was a trail leading from the retreat center up to the summit. And so Steve and I decided to tackle that trail. And it was great. It was beautiful. It was wonderful. And it was like all uphill. It was only a mile there, mile back, but it was like a 600 something feet
Yeah.
elevation
Yeah.
change, right?
Yeah.
And we started at elevation, right? So it was a climb, and I wasn't sure if I was going to make it or not, but I did. And so I had the joy of actually making it to the summit after the hard climb and getting to see the view. And that brought me joy recently.
Yes. That's awesome. That's so
I was
awesome.
like, joy and mountain climbing. We do not get each other, Kirsten.
Well, no, that's
I
fair.
do.
And honestly,
She does.
I did say to Steve, you know what? I do not want to be a mountain climber. I am happy to have made it to the top of this trail, but I think I prefer the like flat trails
Yeah.
much more. Yeah.
And I need mountains sometimes. I need to go climb a hill sometimes. And Kirsten, we have a story about that. But I'm not going to share it today.
Well,
But yeah, I absolutely need mountains sometimes and just to go climb a hill. So
Yep.
Yep.
I'm beginning to appreciate them more. The funny thing is, when Tammy and I were going to name this Wild Hope Rising, like when the idea came up, and then we felt like God was calling us to speak to women in wilderness seasons, you should have seen me because I was like, Tammy, does that mean I'm going to have to be like a wilderness woman? I think I might have started getting hives in that very moment, Kirsten. It was terrifying.
Yeah. And she hasn't dragged you off to the actual wilderness yet, right?
No,
Not
but it's
yet.
growing. No, not yet. But it is growing on me. I'm finding myself like, oh, I actually really do like being in nature. So what don't I like here?
Yeah.
And you know what I think I don't like, and we won't stay in this too long, is that actually the invitation of the wilderness, and this is both metaphorical as well as literally. The invitation of the wilderness is sometimes the reflection that comes up within you. That's the invitation to allow us to rest and reflect. But for a lot of years, I didn't like wilderness because I did not like the ability to reflect. I was spending years running from that. And that's why I said I don't like the wilderness. And so I could only see bees and mountain lions and bears and tigers and whatever. Oh my. I don't know if tigers are in the wilderness, but
Not this wilderness.
Not this wilderness. But, but then I'm like, oh, so no wonder I'm starting to appreciate it more,
Mm. Yeah.
So,
You've built a greater tolerance for sitting with that kind of clarity and that kind of reflection.
Yeah.
yeah. And that's really what we want to invite women into, is the ability to sit with that kind of clarity in these wilderness seasons. I want to just go there today let's talk wilderness seasons. Now, Kirsten, we define those as seasons where a woman might feel held back or fenced in, limited in some way. They might be triggered by grief or life transitions, difficulties, internal, external resistance. But nonetheless, they leave women possibly feeling stuck or disillusioned and sometimes disconnected from ourselves, from others, from God. But we would just love to hear, have you ever been in a wilderness season of sorts? And what was that like for you?
Yes. Yes, I have. I have spent a lot of time in wilderness. It feels like I'm old enough now to have gone through multiple seasons of wilderness. And actually, right now, over the past several months, almost a year, I think I'm emerging out of a long season of wilderness that has stretched for 8 years. So yeah, big, big wilderness, you know, just in my rearview mirror right now. So yeah, the last 8 years have been rough. As I was thinking ahead to today, I was like, okay, what are some of the things that even happened, right? Because there were so many. But over this last 8 year span of time, my husband and I have walked through the death of 3 out of 4 of our parents.
Mm.
Um, I I walked through the death of 2 dear friends who, in my opinion, died too soon. So so we've had loss in there. Both of my adult kids have walked through and continue to walk through really huge challenges that I did not want for them. I would not wish on my worst enemies and would have been unimaginable to me until they started happening. So, been walking through that. I had a close friendship rupture. I in the middle of this season, I walked away from the church community that I'd been part of for 10 years. And in the process, I actually ended up stepping away from the style and type of church that I'd been part of for my whole life and ended up stepping into a whole different sort of church. And it was absolutely the right choice. And it was my choice. And I love where I've landed. But man, the process was painful and hard and disorienting in all kinds of ways. So those are some of the things that have happened over the last 8 years. And also, throw in the mix things like a pandemic and perimenopause and burnout and all the other things that I can't even think of right now, right? So all of
Yeah.
that was in this last season of wilderness for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, is that all?
Well, no, there's I'm sure more.
Tell me more, tell me more.
Oh,
Yeah,
goodness.
we
Yeah.
don't have time,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
No. That is a lot. That's huge.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how that left you feeling.
Yeah, I mean, it's felt like one hard thing stacked on the last hard thing, just over and
Yeah.
over, and no gaps in between them,
Yeah.
and none of that. So there is the overwhelm, there's the exhaustion, there's the loss, there's the grief, there's the anger. Like, if you had one of those emotion wheels and
Yeah.
pointed to any emotion on there, I have had that,
Mhm.
during
Yeah.
this season. So I have felt all of the things.
Yeah. That makes
It's
sense.
in
Yeah.
in these seasons, it's interesting. Over the past, I would say 6 months, I feel like I have had so many conversations with women who are emerging, was the word you used, who are
Mhm.
emerging from what you're describing. Like, there was some weird collective, very long, multiple wilderness thing that was happening across the world for so long. Like, and it has me still curious of like, what is God doing in the world if we have walked through this much, this intensity? I feel like today, right now, you are voicing for so many of those women of the circumstances might be different, the wildernesses might be different, but the common feeling of every emotion was present, and the heaviness of that, and the confusion and disorienting when you're talking about, like, I feel like you are speaking the language of so many. So thank you for
Yeah.
just giving us a little piece of what you've walked through, of opening up your story a bit. It's courageous, and we need to hear from women like you.
Well, thanks. And I am at the place now where I can start wrapping words around some of that. But I gotta say, like, when I was in the middle of it, I couldn't. I couldn't always do that. And I think for me, that's one of the key characteristics of wilderness is that wilderness to me feels like a place without words. Like for me, when I'm in the wilderness, things get quiet, and I struggle to wrap words around my experience. I lose my ability
Mhm.
to do that. And I realize that I might rank the pain of being without words more highly than other people might because I'm a word person. I'm a writer. And so when I find myself without words, without the ability to wrap words around what is going on for me, that is in and of itself terrifying
Right.
Is that
to
like an identity crisis moment for you when that
yeah,
happens?
yeah, absolutely, because so much of my vocation and calling and identity is around words,
Yeah.
right? And if I
Yeah.
don't have words, what am I doing? Right?
Right. And
What
who
am
are
I
you?
so that's really hard. I mean, it's only been, like, in the last year or so that I've started to, like, "Oh, I might have some words about that,"
Mhm.
you know? And and it's almost a little scary. It's like, "Really? Really? Do I get to have words again?" Because that would be great. Last year, I started being able to even journal a little bit in little snatches, which was new. It was something I
Mhm.
hadn't been able to do. And I was looking at something I wrote in a journal last year about wilderness, and I said, "I have felt wordless for years."
Mm.
I've written and spoken very little. Even my social media posts have largely been photos from my evening walks. Only recently have I started to get some words, but they are small, short, compact, a little bit each day. I collect them like manna. They
Mm.
are small, flaky things, and I have to stoop to collect them, but I'm hungry enough to be grateful for their mysterious appearing, and they do taste a little bit like honey.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Right?
Mm.
So that's some
Mm.
of what wilderness is like for me, that I lose words. I lose the ability to wrap words around things. And I may feel that really acutely because of how God wired me. But I think when people are in wilderness, don't we all get to a place where we feel like we're at a loss for words?
Yeah.
For
Right? Is
sure.
that a theme you guys see?
Oh,
Oh,
I
yes. No
can
doubt.
I think in the season of when somebody would ask me, and that's when I would recognize I had no words, because and I don't think I was probably as aware of it as you. I was more in the I was missing creativity, which is what makes me feel alive.
Yeah.
But where I would recognize that I didn't have words was somebody would say, how are you doing with all of that after they heard my A, B, C, D, E, F, G, the whole alphabet of trials.
Right.
And I would say, there'd be long pause. And I couldn't find emotion chart. I couldn't find anything to describe it. Then there was the judging of myself for not having words, right?
Mm.
The oh my goodness. And if I do use this word, have I lost my faith if I use this word? Or have I lost gratitude because not everything is bad? Or so even if a word would pop up, I would judge it. So that's my experience with a loss of words in the wilderness. What about you, Tammy?
Oh, man. I can relate to both of you. And something we have talked before too about sometimes when we don't have words, I find comfort in the fact that the Holy Spirit will pray for me I'm a sigher. And so I do a lot of sighs. And I love the idea that the Holy Spirit is interpreting that sigh that I don't know what. I can't identify it. And that he interprets that into a prayer for me. And so, yeah, when I start
It's
sighing a lot.
it's funny. I want to actually read the scripture that you're talking about that
Okay.
because you and I have talked a lot about this, and I feel women need to know when you have no words. And Kirsten, I know we get to go into the depths of where you found your words, and you're going to help women find their words again. And but in that, the picture Tammy and I have often talked about is those moments where we have no words that I would feel the Holy Spirit groaning on my behalf, that it brought me a level of comfort that maybe God himself was without words in a moment of, oh, he too could feel the pain that I was carrying. And so he, with groanless sighs, sat alongside me, offering up a groan on my behalf. And that has actually taught me about how to sit alongside somebody who has no words and I don't have words. That's okay for me to groan alongside them.
Yep.
But the scripture is this. I'm reading from Message Paraphrase, Romans 8:26-27. Meanwhile, the moment we get tired in the waiting, God's Spirit is right alongside, helping us along. If we don't know how or what to pray, it doesn't matter. He does our praying in and for us, making prayer out of our wordless sighs, our aching groans. He knows us far better than we know ourselves, knows our pregnant condition, and keeps us present before God. That's why we can be so sure that every detail in our lives of love for God is worked into something good. Oh, I love that. It's the sighing in the wilderness of what
Right.
you're talking about. I mean, have you felt that groaning alongside you, Kirsten, through these 8 years?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I think that some of that has been my journey that when I don't have the words, can Jesus be word enough? Can
Mm,
I mean, John
Yeah.
talks about Jesus as the word.
Mm.
So can me just sitting quietly with Jesus be word enough in this season? Can right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Spot on. That's powerful.
and how would you speak to a woman in this moment who is kinda like, "I don't really track with the groaning of the Holy Spirit. You lost me on that." What would you say to her if she doesn't quite know how to sit next to Jesus as the word? What would you say?
Fair enough. Yeah, there are times when I don't know how to sit with him either. So,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Uh, I'm trying to get the hang of that too. And there are times when I don't want to sit with Jesus because I'm really angry with him and what he's allowing to happen in my life. So,
Mm.
you know what? Peace out for right now. I'll be over here.
Right.
And so I mean, I'm a big believer in being present with whoever you are and whatever you've got on your plate and whatever you've got spinning around and swirling in your heart and mind. That okay, that's who you are right now,
Yeah.
right? And so can you start by being present with that and say,
Yeah.
"You know what? I'm a swirling mess right now, and
Good.
I will honor that."
How do you think a person I'm just curious, I want inside your head, because I think sometimes isn't it really hard actually to be okay with us being a mess right now? How do we learn to honor the girl who is a mess right now inside of us?
Wow. That's a whole giant topic,
You're
isn't
like,
it?
"Girl, you are taking it another direction," but
That no, that I love that. I love that direction, and I don't I don't totally know how we get to a place of honoring that. I think that some of it is, finding the things we've believed that keep us from being present
Mm.
with ourselves, like, that I'm like, Sunny, you were talking earlier about how sometimes you weren't sure if you could say the words that even came to mind because they're not the words you're supposed to have.
Mm.
And we do that with our feelings. I can't acknowledge these feelings because they're not the ones I'm supposed to have. I can't acknowledge these thoughts because they're not the ones I'm supposed to have. But they're the thoughts you're having, they're the feelings you're having, they're the
Yeah.
words that are coming to mind, right?
Yeah.
And at some point, we we are able to strip away enough of the expectations and the lies and the whatevers that get in the way of saying, "Yeah, this is who I am right now."
Well, and even with that who I am right now, but getting curious about, okay, so why am I feeling this way? Or what brought this on? So there's some curiosity that can really help too, instead of the judging, like you were talking about, like I shouldn't have these. And I like to say, don't should yourself. Um, and just be present and say, okay, this is what's going on. And let me get curious about that. And journaling can help, but I'm not a huge journaler. So to me, it's more, sometimes I have to find somebody to verbally process with, or just like I need somebody outside my head to see or hear what I'm walking through and help me make sense of it. So everybody does it different,
Mm.
but the curiosity can help all of us.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that idea of curiosity and approaching life with curiosity. I actually chose curiosity as my word for the year a few years ago because I needed to be in that process of noticing when I was going to a place of judging or evaluating or analyzing or whatever it was, instead of being in a place of curiosity, both with other people and with myself.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, I found it way more beneficial.
It's interesting because my mind is just going to I love, first of all, that you're a woman who's not tying it up in a pretty red bow, right? Like, oh, I have an answer of totally how to sit with the discomfort of being in the middle of the mess and accepting what is for what it is. You're showing us that it's a practice. We're all in this, ladies that are listening. We're in this together. In those moments where we don't have words and we don't know how to accept what is, can we just be people who practice that? Can we practice? Tammy and I talked about the unforced rhythms of grace, but we also talked about that being an invitation to presence, of being here now. And sometimes it's just asking ourselves that question: what's here now? What's here now? What am I feeling right now? What actually is? And it's not the statement, it is what it is, but it is what is, rather than it's putting the emphasis and allowing yourself to acknowledge. This is what I said, why I avoided the wilderness, because I didn't want to acknowledge what is, right? But it is what is. My friend, whoever is listening right now, you have the ability to be here right now, practicing your ability to get comfortable with what is. And not comfortable, but honor what is and where you're at. Now, Kirsten, as we're talking through this wilderness, you talked about how words are really important to you. In fact, one of your favorite things to help people with is to step inside of God's story and discover something new about their story in the process. So clearly words are important here. But I'm curious, so are you kind of a story coach? Is that what you do?
That is, I think, a piece of what I do. Absolutely. And because I love story. And in terms of wilderness, I think we don't just lose our words. I think we also lose our story. I think we have all the time in our heads, right? We're writing stories of how we want things to play out or how we expect things to play out. And then all of a sudden it doesn't happen. And our life goes off in this whole different direction that we could not have anticipated. Everything's gone off script. And so it's not even just that we don't have words. It's like we've lost our place in our own story.
Mhm.
It-
So true.
Like
So true.
like I don't even know where I fit in the story of my own life. And that that can be at very least disorienting, but likely is terrifying at certain levels to not have that story, right?
Yeah.
And no wonder we lose our words. No wonder we lose our ability to tell our story. We don't even know what our story is
Mhm.
Yeah.
anymore. And like how do you even find your story again or find this new story that you're suddenly in? Um and and that's hard to do,
Yeah.
right? And I think sometimes we need help with that. And yeah, I have found some ways that are helpful for me. And yeah, I coach people, through some of that process as it's helpful for them. Whether it's working one-on-one with someone or working with a group of people at a retreat, whatever. But I think there's value in exploring, okay, where even am I right now? And what is this new story landscape that I seem to be in? Because I don't
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So I hear you saying that the question isn't really how do we find our words again? It's more how do we find our story?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or a
I
place
think
in the story.
yeah, I think it does come down to that. And I think if you this is where I land on this. If you want to find your place in your story, then you need to look for story,
Mm.
right? So I think when I don't know about you, when I'm in wilderness, I am tempted to go down a huge research rabbit hole, right? And read all the books, all the experts, all the things, right? Find out all the knowledge, the steps, the strategies, whatever that I can do to be fixing this part of my life, whatever it is. And some of that is needed and helpful. Sometimes I land in a wilderness if there's some kind of new medical thing going on. Yeah, I need some information and I need some vocabulary, right? Give it to me. But I have to watch myself. And I guess I would caution other people too that I can go down that research hole too far, and I have to watch myself for where that tipping point is, like where I am now grabbing onto information, believing that somehow that's gonna give me control
Mm.
in a life that feels very out of control right now. Or if I'm doing all the research so I know all the things because I I somehow will feel better about myself if I know this stuff and people will approve of me more if I'm doing these things and taking these steps because oh, look at her pulling herself up by her bootstraps or look at how well she's handling these hard circumstances, right? And when I catch those kinds of motivations in my head, I know, okay, you know what? I need to step away from the research because at that point, it's just distracting me from the significant work that can only happen when you actually sit in the story of wilderness.
Mm.
And just as when you're at a loss for words and can't find your words, you might need to borrow words from someone else in those situations. You might need to also, when you've lost your story, you might need to turn to other people's stories. And I'm not saying turn to other people's stories to compare your story to theirs. That's just going to end in all kinds of unhealthy ways. But turn to stories to understand on a visceral level this landscape of wilderness, the sort of story that you're in right now. So, this is the time to turn to novels or memoirs or TV shows or movies, not just to escape, although there's a time for that, but to understand, to get the feel for wilderness, the tone of wilderness, to see what wilderness does to people, right? And if you're a Bible person, okay, this might be a bit of a hot take, all right? But I stand by it. If you're a Bible person and you're in the wilderness, I would say focus on the stories in the Bible, not the teachings, not the rules, not the explanation, the stories. Okay? I think too often we think of the Bible as a rule book or as an instruction manual. But you know what? Like 3/4 of the Bible is story. It's literary, right? So it's 3/4 literary, 1/4 exposition, meaning that the bulk of the Bible is story and poetry and imagery and metaphor, all of that kind of stuff. And I think that's because God knows we're story people.
Mm.
And he knows that we're going to find our place, find ourselves in story. So I would say that's the part of the Bible you probably would want to gravitate toward in the wilderness.
If you're looking, let's say for the person that's like, okay, I haven't considered this before. If I were to read the Bible for story, what might they grab there? Help us walk through the, like, I'm the chick in the wilderness. I'm grabbing for story. Walk us through that.
Okay, great. So there is this type of prayer called Ignatian contemplation, or sometimes called the prayer of imagination, which I just love the prayer of imagination just all by itself. And I have been actually practicing this for most of my life, long before I even knew there was a name for it, or that people have been practicing this for centuries. I tend to think I don't always use the big terms, so you don't have to think of it as Ignatian contemplation. No, I just think of it as stepping into the story. So, and this might be a really different way of reading and interacting with the Bible than what you're used to, but I think it's an important one. I think a lot of us have spent time in church spaces, Christian spaces, whatever, that where the approach to the Bible is really analytical or almost scientific, or you're mining it for information and for the steps and for application, right? And there is a place for that. I'm an academic. I teach Bible to undergrads. So I'm not saying ditch all of that. I am saying don't miss out on the richness that can come from actually stepping into the story of the Bible as well. So when you step into the story, your goal is not to find the lessons or the 3 key points or the applications or the action steps or the formulas. Your goal is connection, to
Mm.
experience the story with all your senses, to notice, to meet up with Jesus inside the story and see what happens. So when you step into the story, the goal is not to find an answer to fix a problem. The goal is to start a conversation between you and Jesus, a conversation between you and yourself. Do you want me to walk through the basic steps of stepping into the story?
I think that would be really helpful so that people who maybe are not as, creative in thinking can follow you with, okay, I really want to do this, Kirsten. I'm without words. How
Yeah.
do I step into the stories of the Bible?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this is a bonus hot take. Technically, like Ignatian prayer, you're going to do this with a story from the Bible, right? And I would start with gospel stories. But if you're drawn to a different story, run with that. Okay. But I would say, actually, you can do this same step into the story process with other kinds of stories as well. So if you're not a Bible person, or if you're, angry with the Bible right now, find a different story, right? So you can pick a scene from a book, pick a scene from a movie, pick a scene from a TV show that I have watched that scene like 10 times. That's a clue that might be a story to step into. So basically, I would say there are 3 steps for stepping into the story. First, you would want to prepare, and then you want to step in, and then you want to reflect. So the preparation piece is just choose a story. What's the story you want to step into? And I would just say, what story keeps coming to mind? What if you're reading through a gospel and it's like, ooh, that's good. Wait, I'm or if you're reading or watching something and you have emotions start to well up, it's like, oh, that's a time, like Tammy said, to get curious and say, I wonder if there's something there. That might be what you want to pick. So if you pick a big story, like don't pick a whole movie scene from the movie. Don't pick a whole
Okay.
gospel. Pick one little story from the gospel. Narrow it down, pick that. And maybe if you're picking a scene from the middle of something, then think through, okay, what happened right before that scene? What happens right after, so that you've got it rooted in the bigger story. And then think about, okay, what person in the scene do I most resonate with? Who do I connect with? So, if there's a story where Jesus is healing a person and there's a crowd around, okay, so am I resonating with Jesus in this story? Am I resonating with the person being healed? Am I resonating with one of the people in the crowd? Who is that I'm resonating? And so pick that person, and then you're going to move to the next step, which is actually stepping into the story. And in that part of the process, you might want to give yourself a little space for this little time and let your imagination run with it.
Do you
And
feel like it would be beneficial right here, if you're going through the steps, but what if Tammy or you coached us through one of those imagination moments?
okay,
Does it take too long to do that, or do you feel like we could maybe go there?
well, we could try it. I've never done,
I mean, I
step
don't
into
know.
story speed round, but I'm game.
It's speed dating. This is awesome. I've never done speed dating. I always wanted to, and
Right?
we're in it. So, Tammy, do you want to go or you want me?
I'm resonating with what she's saying, but I keep thinking of being someone in the crowd, not the person who's being healed. And so let's just use that Jesus is healing the woman, um, and I'm an observer in the crowd,
Okay, so are you talking about Jesus healing the woman who's been
bleeding for 12.
bleeding for 12
Yes.
years? Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, so there's this story in the Gospels where there's a woman who has been bleeding for 12 years, horrible medical condition, pain, all of that. So there's the physical stuff, and then there's also the social implications of that, because in that culture, the bleeding made her unclean, so she was an outcast basically in the society, right? So there's a whole crowd of people around Jesus. She's heard that he could heal, right? So she's kind of sneaks through the crowd and just touches the edge of his cloak. And like, because if I just touch it, then maybe I'll be healed. And right. And she is healed and is planning to sneak away. And Jesus doesn't let her, calls her out. And, and yeah, so there's a cure and there's a healing that happens. So if you're not familiar with the story, that's the nutshell version. So, so Tammy, if you're placing yourself in that story, and you're one of the people in the crowd. So what I would want for you to do is, in your imagination, just put yourself in that scene, in the middle of
Yep.
the town, in the scene, and see if you can engage your senses. So what do you see around you? What do you hear? What do you smell? What do you feel? What do you
Yeah.
touch? So any
Right.
of that,
Yeah. Yeah. I was already
what do you
starting to
see?
go there. And number one, I'm curious about Jesus and who the heck he is and all the rumors that I've been hearing. And at the same time, there's this woman that if she touches me, I'm going to be unclean. And so I feel myself being repelled, because I don't want to be unclean. And I'm horrified that she's actually even here,
Yeah.
because she could put all of us at risk. And at the same time, there's the crowd pushing in, a little bit of, I don't know if I want to get out of here or I just want to tuck in and just take it all in. Um, but what is he going to do? And I'm really curious about that. So I don't want to leave.
Mm.
And at the same time, I'm like, what if he could do what she thinks he could do? What would that mean? And if he would do that, no, he's not gonna do that. It's been happening for 12 years. Why why would this change anything? She's gone to all kinds of doctors. I know this. I've heard the rumors. And it is not working. So why does she think he can do it? And so I'm skeptical. You know, um, part of me hopes that it's true, because I got some things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's that's great stuff, right? I could tell that you were in that scene and you weren't sharing all the sensory details, but I could sense you watching what's going on.
yeah.
And so that's the sort of thing that you want to do when you step in to a story. You want to ground yourself in the environment, like can you feel the dust? Can you hear the crowd around you? Can you hear the sounds of the footsteps or whatever? Can you feel people brushing up against you? Can you all of that stuff, put yourself there and then you start having those thoughts and those questions like Tammy was doing. And you just stay in that scene as long as it's playing out. So you look for the moment in the scene that's drawing your attention. You move toward that, as Tammy just did, and you let God lead you through the story in your imagination, and you just stay there until you feel done. And
And then what?
and
So I've
then,
done it. I've followed you through.
yeah,
I had some questions, and this is clearly the little red bow girl in me. We got to tie up in a pretty red bow. But what
yeah.
happens next? I
What
mean,
happens next? Yeah. So the next, go ahead, Tammy. What were you gonna say?
Well, the thing that lingered for me
Mhm.
is that um, I'm wondering if he's going to do this for her. And if he does it for her, would he do it for me?
Yes.
Um, and so for me, that would indicate to me that I have some things to look at there, some things
Yes.
to be curious. Why am I thinking that?
Yes. That's absolutely what the next step is to, you make your way out of the story and back into whatever environment you're living in. And you take some time to reflect and you go, okay, what is sticking with me? Like Tammy was just saying, what insights did I have or what surprised me or whatever it was in that story, whether it was a discovery about the story, about myself, about God, about my emotions, right? Whatever it is, what came to the surface by me being in that story? And what does that then reveal about my current season or something I'm
Mm,
struggling with or whatever it is? Because I think part of the power of story is that, you know what? Sometimes it's easier for me to step into that story over there than to step directly into my own story. But when I step into that story over there, guess what? I'm bringing myself with me. And I I chose this story for a reason. And I
yeah,
chose that person for a reason because there's something in me that's connecting to that.
yeah,
And when I step into that story and I go, okay, well, I'm in this story. Who am I going to talk to? Am I going to have a conversation with Jesus? And how do I feel about Jesus in this story? Am I skeptical? Am I angry? Am I drawn toward it? And I have that conversation in that other story.
yeah.
And then I can bring that back to my own story and go, oh, you know what? I actually do feel like that in my life too.
ugh,
And maybe I can look at that now. It uncovers and starts conversations that may have been blocked or hidden because it's too scary to look at them.
mm.
So this is kind of a way to create safety for yourself
I
that
love this. I mean, those guys aren't on camera, so you can't see, but I actually am getting emotional at this. And I wasn't even in the one in Tammy's story because as you just said that it's easier to enter another story, I'm thinking of stories I go into the Bible, like, why recently do I have this particular one in my mind? And
yes,
immediately, just by hearing you say that, I'm having an experience of, oh, I know exactly why. And I am wondering, Tammy, if you would, because I think it will help the listener who we are asking to try stepping into stories, would you risk sharing with us why you believe that maybe that moment was standing out to you of what was happening and what that might reveal in your current story?
Well, I think that I see God act on behalf of others a lot. I get the privilege of walking alongside them um, in lots of moments when he's doing that. And sometimes I forget to stop and ask for those things for myself. Not because I don't believe he can do them, because I watch him do them. It's just that I'm so busy lots of times helping other people with having that experience with him that I can forget to say no. Maybe he wants to do that for me too. Um, and so I think that's why it stood out to me. And that little just like, oh, I'm watching this happen. And I get to have that window into some people's lives, as a mentor, as a coach. And so, yeah, but I need to remember to stop and do that for myself as well.
Yeah. And if we were working together on this, I would get curious about, okay, so is that a conversation that you're able to have with Jesus in your life right now? Or if that feels scary still to you, you can step back into that story,
Yes,
that
I need
person
to.
in
Yeah.
the crowd again, and see what would happen if after Jesus heals this woman, what if he looks over at you? Like, what would that do?
Or no.
Or right? Yeah,
Yes.
or what emotions does that bring up?
Right.
Or play it out in different ways.
Yeah.
Like, what if I also reached out and tried to touch his cloak? What would
Right.
happen?
Right.
And you can play with those what ifs, and you can have those conversations inside the story
Mm.
and
Yeah.
then bring that back out into your own life when you're ready.
Well, and honestly, when you say, "What if he turns and looks at me?"
Yeah.
What if I let that in? What if I receive that? Just like he looks at me and he's like, "Yeah, you too. Oh, me too. Yeah, Jesus, I need more of this."
It takes me, the one thing that comes to mind is it takes the phrase that the word is living and active. And it's like, oh my goodness, that whole using your imagination in it, being living and active. I can enter this scene like Kirsten, like I thank you for taking us through that process, because I think there's people like me who get really literal and I'm like, what does she mean? I want to know, if I want to practice this, how do I do that? And I could see how, yes, we could do a little of this work on our own, but I do see why there would be value in having a coach like yourself that could come alongside us in that story to be that place of asking questions. And what I would say to you is, you guys might not have a Kirsten in your life. And you can get a Kirsten in your life, and we're going to share in our show notes. If you want to get in touch with Kirsten and you want to know more about this story work, you can do that. Also, what about taking the risk of sharing this episode with a friend of yours, someone that you trust, and saying you want to do one of those story things together? Like, what if you took that challenge and you said, hey, I have, and Tammy, follow up with me on this, because I have a story that came to mind. It's why I got emotional. And I was like I'm outside the podcast disassociated, having my own relationship with Jesus in that moment. And I think it's important, because why did it come to mind?
Yeah.
So ladies, take this episode of the gift of the free value that Kirsten just poured into us and practice it with a friend. See what happens. And if it benefits your life, we want to be a culture of honor here. Please share that on social media. You can connect with Kirsten there you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook. She's got a website, and we're going to link you to all of those. But tell her thank you. Let's be people of honor if this has meant something to you. And I know you also put together a tool for our ladies. Tell us about that. And girls, we'll link this in the show notes for you, as well as you can find it on Kirsten's Instagram. Go to her link
Yep.
tree there. But
Absolutely. So if you didn't capture all of that in your brain while we were talking, never fear. We will have a PDF for you. I'll give you the steps to step into a story so that you can do that for yourself. I'll offer a couple other resources for you, ideas that you could explore and try out and see what fits for you during this time.
Awesome.
Kirsten, I love not only that you've opened up your story for us today, that you walked us through how to do the story work, but also that you have just given us something practical. I think women want to take away something like, what do I do? Tell me. And so you've given us that. Now we know as we're helping women in wilderness seasons, we just love to help lead people to wide open spacious life. So as you imagine stepping out of the wilderness, out of all that holds us back and into that wide open spacious life that we were created for, could you paint a picture for us? What does that life look like, and what does it feel like to maybe be that wildly free?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I almost don't have to imagine it because that's the space that I'm in right now, right? Stepping out of wilderness, emerging from wilderness, like I'm in that transitional moment. And if I kind of step into that story myself, I guess part of me feels pressure sometimes, um, or expectation, like I should be running full tilt now. Now that I'm in the wide open spaces, I should be running pell-mell into whatever the amazing future is. Or I feel like I should be spinning around on the mountainside singing like Julie Andrews in the Sound of Music,
Sound of Music.
right? Uh, But but I'm not. Um, Honestly, I'm taking it slow. I'm getting my bearings. I I was in the wilderness for a long time, and it changed me. And I need to get used to this new landscape, and I need to get used to my new self. I am very, very glad to be here in this new season, and I am filled with a deep joy and curiosity and anticipation, and I don't want to be held back. But I do want to be rooted, and I want to carry with me what I learned in the wilderness. I want to carry with me the conversations that Jesus and I started in the wilderness. And I want to move into these wide open spaces with the freedom that comes with knowing wherever I go in the future, whether it's wilderness or oasis or valley or mountaintop, that Jesus' love is there also, already there waiting for me, and that there are very good stories ahead for
Mm.
me to step into.
Mm. Yes.
Beautiful. Well, Kirsten, thank you for joining us on Wild Hope Rising. And we are just praying that this would be a new season for you, that you see the wild hope rise in the most unexpected of places. Thank you for sharing the gift of your time, and both for being shoulders we could stand on back then, but now you're shoulders for women in wilderness seasons. And so we thank you for that.
Thank you. Thanks for having
Thank,
this conversation.
yeah. Thanks for being here. Mm.
We're out of here, ladies. My prayer is freedom will become your story and redemption your song. Now it's time to take hope-filled action. And if today's episode spoke to you, please don't keep it to yourself. Like, subscribe, and share, and help us grow this community. Thanks for listening to Wild Hope Rising. Until next time, keep stepping boldly into the spacious life you were created for.